Good morning. It's Wednesday, January 14th. The multi-front war in the Middle East is now 830 days old. I'm your host, Jonathan Schanzer. Welcome back to the FDD Morning Brief. All right, let's kick this thing off with some good news this morning. Israel appears to be emerging from the international isolation brought about by the October 7th wars. On Sunday, Germany signed a security pact to deepen cooperation on counterterrorism and cyber defense efforts, but it didn't end there. Germany and Israel aerospace industry signed a $3.1 billion Arrow 3 defense system contract. That's $3.1 billion with a B. The new contract expands upon an existing deal signed 2 years ago. That brings the total sale to over $6.5 billion with a B, making it Israel's largest ever defense export deal. Yes, I know that Germany has historic reasons for its continued support to Israel, but let's also remember that Germany remains a leader in the EU, and the EU remains a key trading partner for Israel. So yes, more please, and thanks. Oh, and a little bit more good news out of Europe this morning. I see some signs of life over there. Our allies may be finally getting off their keisters and getting behind the protests in Iran. Nigel Farage in the UK, the foreign minister of France. Keep it up, fellas. The Iranian people need all the help they can get. Today's guest is FDD's supreme leader, Clifford D. May. Before becoming the founder and president of our shop, Cliff was a journalist for the failing New York Times. Wasn't failing back then. His reporting took him around the world, covering some of the most consequential stories of our time. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to cover the most consequential stories of our time, from Venezuela to Ukraine to Iran and beyond. Some globe-trotting coming your way in just a few. So, stretch those hamstrings. We're going to do some running. All right, let's move on with the show. The regime in Iran continues to kill and maim the protesters who've come out with increasing intensity since the protests began 18 days ago. The death toll could be as high as 20,000, according to some reports, but we can't be sure. That's because the regime is jamming communications. No phone, no internet, and they're using military-grade technology to do this. Trump warned the regime not to kill protesters. That clearly hasn't registered. Either that or the regime is calling his bluff. But is it a bluff? Some say Trump balked when he merely announced the 25% tariff on imports from countries doing business with Iran. I'm not so sure he stood down. The largest purchaser of Iranian oil is China. So it took some chutzpah from Trump to lock horns with Xi Jinping. Credit where it's due. But this thing ain't over, ladies and germs. More is coming. Trump met yesterday with his national security team to discuss his many options, strong options. He appears ready to intervene. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Trump posted a message of encouragement for the Iranian people on Truth Social. Here's what he said. Help is on the way. Since then, non-essential personnel at America's massive Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar are reportedly leaving. The moment of truth may be nearing, folks. I don't know how it ends, but if the regime collapses, whether by popular protest or U.S. intervention, it'll be the biggest Middle East moment since 1979. That's when this rotten regime came to power. May it soon fall. Now for your headlines. Headline 1, the Trump administration designated not 1, not 2, but 3 branches of the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations yesterday. And to that I say, boom. There have been several failed attempts over the last decade to designate the Brotherhood. Then, just before Thanksgiving, Donald Trump signed an executive order pledging to designate individual branches of the Brotherhood. A sound strategy, if you ask me, for going after a transnational movement that has no single leader, headquarters, or playbook. The administration made good on its pledge yesterday. And I'm going to give a shout out here to my former colleague, Sebastian Gorka, who played a significant role in doing what nobody ever thought was possible. Chapeau, Seb. Now for the details. The first 3 branches designated are in Lebanon, Egypt, and Jordan. Treasury designated the Egyptian and Jordanian chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood as specially designated global terrorists, or SDGTs, as we call it. Doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. They did so for providing material support for Hamas. The Lebanese branch of the Muslim Brotherhood got slapped with a foreign terrorist organization, FTO, as we call it. That's a little bit easier on the mouth, which is a State Department action. Hopefully, this is just the start of a longer, broader campaign to tackle the Muslim Brotherhood. And rest assured, we here at FDD will be looking at other branches of the network to tackle. I got my eye on the Islah Party in Yemen. I'm looking at the Malaysian Muslim Brotherhood. I got a list already. I'm teeing it up. I'm going to be sending it over to whoever's ready to read it. Headline 2, more than a year has passed since the rather unremarkable death of Hamas mastermind Yahya Sinwar. You'll recall he was the man primarily responsible for the 10/7 slaughter. His death left a significant void in Hamas's leadership structure, and that vacancy still has not been filled. Hamas was supposed to elect the new head of its political bureau in the first 10 days of January. By the way, let me just say, there is really no difference between the political and military wings of Hamas. Nevertheless, it is a position that is important to the organization. That position was previously held by Ismail Haniyeh, who met his fiery end in July 2024 when the Israelis took him out in Iran. And then Sinwar, who joined Haniyeh in the land of the not living just a few months later when a routine IDF patrol team got lucky and took him out as well. Turns out Hamas can't seem to get its act together right now. The terror group still hasn't chosen a new leader. Earlier this week, Saudi media reported that Hamas postponed elections indefinitely. Sources offered various reasons for the delay, including ongoing negotiations over the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire, which are happening right now in Cairo, but are truly leading nowhere. Also, we're hearing about disagreements within the terrorist organization itself. That's what I'm watching. No surprise there. Chaos within Hamas was inevitable as the top leaders got taken out one by one. As much as everyone would like to see the moment that Hamas implodes, I'm here to tell you this morning that it could be a process, not an event. And that process appears to be playing out as we speak. Pass the popcorn. And headline 3, Kurds across the Middle East are getting feisty. Check this out. CNN reports that the Kurdish National Army, also known as the SMK, which is the military wing of the Kurdistan Freedom Party, also known as the PAK, captured the IRGC headquarters in the western Iranian town of Kermanshah. Still waiting to get confirmation on that, but huge if true, as they say on the platform formerly known as Twitter. Now to Syria, 5 days of fighting broke out last week in Aleppo, where at least 23 people were killed. Yesterday, thousands of Kurds took to the streets to protest the government of Ahmad al-Shara, who is rapidly becoming the most hated man in Kurdistan. A reminder to everybody tuning in here, the Kurdish population in the Middle East is ginormous. It's anywhere from 30 to 40 million people. They should have their own country. And that makes Iranians nervous. Makes the Syrians nervous, makes the Turks super nervous. All the regimes I found problematic, as it turns out. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on this Kurdish activity, maybe even cheering for it, and I'll report back with updates. All right, it's time to bring on FDD founder, president, and supreme leader, Clifford May. He's a repeat offender on this program, so let's have him on. Welcome to the program, Cliff May.
Good to see and be offending with you, Jonathan.
Okay, well, let's try to be offensive. All right. Speaking of offensive or maybe defensive, I want to start with Ukraine. I know you follow this very carefully. I know you're writing about it right now. We haven't talked about it lately on the show. So what's happening between Russia and Ukraine? Are we seeing any progress there? Are we getting to yes? Or are we still?
No, we're not seeing any. We're not seeing any progress. We're not getting to yes. Vladimir Putin, who sees himself as the czar of all the Russias, he is intent on restoring the great Russian Empire. What does that mean? It means that he's czar of all the Russias. What are all the Russias? Russia proper, Belarus, which means white Russia, and Ukraine, which does mean sort of frontier of Russia. He has not changed his position whatsoever. He is committing war crimes every single day. Right now, what he's trying to do is say to the Ukrainians, if you don't surrender, I'm going to freeze you to death. He is targeting energy facilities and that sort of thing. He's not moved at all. The only good news I can tell you is that the Ukrainians are just not giving up. They're not giving up their freedom, their independence, their nation, their culture, their language. As long as weapons keep flowing to them, and so far they have been, they will continue to fight. But it's a very tough fight for all kinds of reasons. It's by no means over, and we're not nowhere near any kind of diplomatic solution.
No, and I don't think I ever really expected one. I know Trump thought it would come quickly. It didn't. I think that was a tough lesson.
He misunderstands Putin, in my view.
Yeah. I think he gave Putin way too much credit. Maybe he thought too much of his own relationship with Putin. But that obviously is sort of stuck in neutral. At least we're not in reverse, and I guess that's a good thing. Let's talk about Venezuela. I know you recently had a great conversation with Carrie Filippetti on Venezuela. You've done some writing on this. You've been talking to folks about it. How do you assess where we are? I mean, I know there's this sort of legalistic interpretation of what happened. It's not regime change because we left the rest of the regime in power, but we took Maduro out. What is the state of play right now from your perspective?
Yeah,
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
exactly. I've got a column on this in the Washington Times this morning. It's online as of last night. Look, first of all, this was an amazing feat of intelligence and military daring do the way that he was taken out. He may have thought that the air defense systems given to him or by the Russians would protect him from the helicopters, at least. He was misinformed. He thought his Cuban bodyguards would protect him should the hostiles get into his actual residence where they were. The Cuban muscle was no match whatsoever for the Delta Force. They came in, and by the way, more than 30 Cuban bodyguards went home in body bags. That's really quite amazing. This was, as you say, it was an arrest. It was not regime change. Those who are in power now are his regime. They're the pillars of his regime. They're pretty bad dudes, and led by a woman who is pretty bad herself. The president.
Do that?
What's that? And Delcy Rodriguez. I love the name Delcy.
I'm saying if the other ones are dudes, is she a dudette?
No, there's Delcy, good first name. Then there's Diosdado Caballo. Diosdado means given by God. You told me that's what Jonathan also means, so I didn't realize that. And then there's a Vladimir Pedrino Lopez. Vladimir. I don't know if he was named for Vladimir Lenin. I tried to find that out, but I haven't been able to. He's the defense minister. They're all stalwart loyalists to Maduro. They are all socialists. They all have blood on their hands from acts of terrorism. They're really bad. The president thinks, and he may be right, that, and he has said this, they're giving me what I feel is necessary. And although I think any one of the three of them would be very pleased to slit Trump's throat with a butter knife, nevertheless, they may believe that appeasement is the better part of valor in this case. So there's a list of things we can go through what they are, and maybe just mention a few that the president wants, and I think he's likely to get. In the long term, and this is the most important point, I do think, and I hope he knows, I think he does, and I definitely believe Marco Rubio knows, there's got to be a new government. You can't leave these people in power. It can't be done right away because, and this is an important point for Venezuela, but also for Iran, the opposition, and it's a wonderful opposition, I have to say, in Venezuela, they don't have guns. And without guns, it's very hard to have a revolution or a counter-revolution.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of Iran.
That's what I'm saying. Absolutely the case, yeah.
Yeah, and so let's talk about Iran. You've covered it. You were there during the revolution the last time around, right. 79. This could be that counter-revolution if we play our cards right. That's the hope anyway. That's where we're angling for here at FDD. But so tell us, how do you assess where things are right now?
I'm hopeful, but not confident. Why do I say that? Because the same problem in Venezuela and in Iran, the opposition doesn't have guns. While the regime has a monopoly on violence and is willing to use it to slaughter as many people as necessary, you have the real risk that you end up, as in Tiananmen Square, where the regime at the end of the day prevails. The Shah, who left in the same month in January 1979 that I got there, after that, the Ayatollah Khomeini was flown in a private jet or Air France jet from France to Iran. The Shah was not going to kill as many Iranians as necessary to stay in power. And Jimmy Carter told him, don't kill a lot of people. I don't want to see that. And everybody was wrong about the revolution and about Khomeini and what it meant. And we can talk about that. So what I would hope, both in terms of Venezuela and in terms of Iran, is that somebody in Washington or Northern Virginia is on the phone with military officers who are patriotic and don't want to see their fellow citizens killed. And they can be the agents of change. There's also the possibility that you've mentioned that the president, he started to do some things that are very helpful, 25% on tariffs on anybody doing business with the regime in Iran. There are things you can do. We at FDD have proposed them. Mark Dubowitz, Behnam Ben Talabou have had some articles in the Atlantic and other places. We talk about measures that the president can take to help the opposition win. I hope that's the case. What you want to see is some of those with guns. Could be the military, could be the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is not the same as the military, could be the Basiji, which are sort of brown shirt thugs, say, I can't do this anymore. I can't kill my own people. But it's hard, and the regime knows all this. They know what happened in Tiananmen Square. They know what happened in Russia when Gorbachev was too easy on the opposition. We have challenging days ahead. I'll stop there for now.
We do, but that's a challenge that obviously FDD is going to be working on. This is one of our bread and butter issues, and certainly we're going to try to drive an outcome that doesn't lead to more of the same. We've seen this in 2009. We saw it in 2022. We cannot have another failed revolution. This feels like the big one. So we're going to try to capitalize on it while we can. I want to ask you, you wrote a couple of weeks ago about something that I don't think got enough attention. And that's Trump's national security strategy. A lot of people would say, we don't have a strategy. Donald Trump wakes up, tweets whatever the heck he wants, and, that's American policy. But you wrote about it, I think, as something that was maybe a bit more thoughtful. That was back in late December. So maybe just give us a quick refresher on what's in that strategy and maybe how's it playing out, or is it playing out right now?
Well, I mean, one thing that's in the strategy very clearly is that the President Trump was saying, the Western Hemisphere, Latin America, South America, we're no longer going to allow our adversaries to essentially take over, which they have been doing. No place more so than Venezuela, which has had very close relations with Tehran, with Russia, with China. China's been coming in very strong. Various arrangements where they build things, they get debt, they get influence. This was not in any way opposed by the Biden administration. He said, we're not going to. Anyhow, all this could have made us think he's going to do exactly what he did in Venezuela to Maduro. That was part of it. Look, it's a strategy. It's not a grand strategy. What do I mean by that? A grand strategy takes years. The fact of the matter is where we are in the U.S. at this point. Politics doesn't end at the water's edge, as Senator Vandenberg once said. His strategy for the world, his way of seeing the world, President Trump's, is not like Biden's, not like Obama's. Who knows what we get in the next presidency? It's a strategy for the next 4 years, but it's more forward-leaning than one might think. And keep in mind, people said, "Oh, he's an isolationist." Well, he bombed Fordo. Well, he took out Maduro. Well, he bombed in Syria. He is willing to utilize military force to achieve ends that are in the American interest. And I think in these cases, in the interest of the Venezuelans, in the interest of the Iranians and others. But yes, he is famously unpredictable, and that can be a very good thing, but it also makes you and me and a lot of other people rather nervous.
Makes us nervous, but I got to say, I like that you can't put him in a box. I like that, the isolationists are not able to wrangle him and make him commit to not doing certain things that I think are in the American interest. So, I overall, I got to say, I'm not unhappy. Got to say, I don't love the Greenland thing. Maybe we can have a conversation another time about that, but we're talking about a peaceful country here. So when you're talking about our hemisphere, I look at Cuba as maybe another country that is in our crosshairs, right? I think looking southward rather than northward is kind of the way that I'd go here if I were advising Trump. Not that he would listen, but I do see some more opportunities in the southern hemisphere.
By the way, Cuba, absolutely. One of the demands that the president is making of the interim president, Darcy Rodriguez, is no more subsidized oil for Cuba. Is that a problem? It's a huge problem. The Cuban economy is already enfeebled. Could not getting oil from Venezuela mean economic collapse for the Castroite regime? It could. And boy, wouldn't that be an achievement for the history books on the part of the president?
Yeah, sure would. And I'm old enough to remember the rapprochement that we had during the Obama years with
Obama took pictures of himself under portraits of Che Guevara. He got nothing in return for that unbelievable concession and others he made. And we won't even get into the weapons that have been used against American diplomats on Cuban soil and where they can. That's a whole nother subject that you might want to explore at some
Yeah,
point.
no, I think at some point we need to get a chemical weapons or biological weapons expert to talk about this Havana syndrome that has impacted our personnel there. All right, very briefly before I let you go, I got two quick things. You're a New Yorker, so I know you're taking a pretty dim view of the new mayor there. You wrote about it in a recent column. Just 30 seconds. How do you view what's going on there?
30 seconds. First of all, I wonder if Maduro is happy to be in a city with a socialist mayor. I wonder if he's feeling the collectivist warmth. Secondly, Zoran Mandami said that the seizure, the arrest of Maduro was illegal. That's interesting because if that's true, Trump is responsible. And we have to ask ourselves, if Trump goes to New York City, will Mamdani arrest him for this crime? Interesting to see. I'm worried for New York. I haven't lived there in a long time. My son does live there. It's quite an experiment going on there right now.
Yeah. The People's Republic of New York. All right. Last question. Maybe it's a little bit of a softball, but I feel like I need to ask it. People have been asking me, as the optimism continues to swell around the Iranian protest movement, that if Iran falls, what does FDD have to offer any longer? Because we've been so Iran obsessed, right? With all the different proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, and then Iran itself and all the mess that Iran has made around the region. So give it to us straight, Mr. Supreme Leader. What does the future of FDD look like if the regime falls?
Hey, listen, I wish we could close down the shop and open up a yoga studio or something like that. When I started FDD, I didn't think we needed more than a few years because everybody understood after 9/11 that terrorism was dreadful. But then, the media began to say, oh, no, this one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. Look, Turkey, Erdogan, we at FDD saw early on, very hard, when others didn't, that there was something going on there that was very bad. I talked about Putin being the neo-czar. Erdogan is the neo-sultan and maybe the neo-caliph of the new Ottoman Empire. His ambitions are very clear, very dangerous to Israel, very dangerous to the region. Also, if you don't have Iran as a threat, will the various what we call pragmatic or moderate Arab nations still see Israel as a good ally, or will they say now it's time for us to go after him? I got to say, I've been a very bullish on Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince there for some time. I'm getting worried. A lot of the things he's doing lately, you know about this. You've talked about this a little bit, with more to come. I'm worried about where he is going these days. So I'm afraid to say, Jonathan, you and I are not going to be able to retire anytime soon.
I'm a little disappointed, Cliff. You didn't say that in the Middle East, there are no permanent victories, only permanent battles.
Thank you for reminding
to yourself.
Thank you. You're right.
Very quotable. I still quote you all the time for that. Anyway, all right, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you, FDD's Cliff May, our Supreme Leader. Thanks for joining us today on the FDD Morning Brief.
Thanks, John.
All right, here's what FDD has on tap for you today. Be sure to check out the January edition of FDD's Trump Administration Foreign Policy Tracker. Every month, our experts assess the White House foreign policy across key areas from Iran and Sunni jihadism to non-proliferation and international organizations. And then we assign trend lines ranging from very positive to neutral to negative to very negative. So be sure to check it out. We call balls and strikes. Very few other people do. See what our folks think about everything that the Trump administration is doing in foreign policy. Meanwhile, time to update your podcast queue. Check out the latest episode of FDD's Foreign Policy, hosted by today's FDD Morning Brief guest. Cliff and Carrie Filippetti, who I mentioned earlier, assess the fallout from the U.S. capture of Maduro and how this could boost U.S. strategy in the Western Hemisphere. And also check out FDD's Mark Dubowitz, who joined the Long War Journal's Generation Jihad podcast, hosted by FDD's Bill Roggio, to discuss the state of play in Iran amidst the escalating protests. Finally, in a sharp New York Post op-ed, FDD's Ahmad Sharawi argues that the Trump administration should learn from Obama's botched red line. When Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons on his own people, Obama promised consequences and then there weren't any. I remember that mess like it was yesterday, maybe because it led to the chaos in the Middle East that we're still cleaning up. Paging Donald Trump. Now is the moment for the United States to prove that it will hold the worst actors of the Middle East accountable. All right, folks, stick a fork in today's episode. It's done. This is the part where I tell you to read our website and to check out all the great new content on our socials, and that contributions to FDD are tax deductible. Very tax deductible. As tax deductible as they get. So you know what to do. Head over to fdd.org/invest to learn more. Tune in Friday for another riveting, compelling, can't miss, grab you by the lapels episode of the FDD Morning Brief. Until then, I'm Jonathan Schanzer, signing off for FDD.